Before we call action on this dark and twisted production, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and switch on your notifications. Trust us, this is a premiere you won't want to miss. Now, let the lights dim, the camera roll, and prepare to witness the chilling truth behind the perfect stunt. This is the case of the shadow in the spotlight. The world of a blockbuster movie set is one of controlled chaos. It's a universe of shouting assistant directors, humming generators, and the scent of manufactured fog, all orchestrated to capture a few perfect seconds of cinematic magic. On the set of the superhero epic Ascendant, this chaos was focused on a single, terrifying spectacle, the pinnacle drop. The scene called for the film's hero, played by rising star Alex Vance, to leap from the rooftop of a 300-foot skyscraper, plummeting towards the street below before being saved by his character's superpowers at the last possible second. In reality, Alex Vance was sipping a latte in his trailer. The man actually standing on the precipice of the massive custom-built set piece was Jax Ryder. Jax was a legend in the stunt community. At 42, he possessed a lean, wiry strength and a preternatural calm that defied the death-defying work he did for a living. He was the invisible man who made superstars look invincible. He had doubled for the biggest names in Hollywood, his body absorbing the brutal impacts of car crashes, explosions, and high falls. He was the industry's best, a master of physics, timing, and calculated risk. Today, he wasn't performing the stunt. He was coordinating it. He was responsible for the life of the young stuntman, a talented newcomer named Kevin Dawson, who would be taking the fall for Alex Vance. The atmosphere on set was electric. This was the money shot. Director Marcus Blackwood, a titan of the industry known for his demanding vision, watched from his monitor-filled video village, a frown of intense concentration etched on his face. The film's leading lady, the beautiful and talented Lena Sterling, stood nearby, her hand unconsciously covering her mouth in nervous anticipation. Safety checks complete. Jax's voice boomed over the set's communication system, a voice of pure confidence. Rigger is green. Camera is green. On my mark for the drop. He gave the young stuntman a final, reassuring nod. Everything was perfect. The descender rig, a complex system of high-tensile cables and magnetic brakes, had been checked and rechecked. The safety harnesses were secure. Jax himself had personally inspected every carabiner and every anchor point. He was a fanatic for safety, a perfectionist in a profession where the smallest mistake could be the last. Action! Blackwood yelled. On cue, Kevin leaped from the edge, a perfect swallow dive into the abyss. He fell, accelerating with terrifying speed. The cameras followed his descent. It was breathtaking. Then came the moment for the magnetic brakes to engage, to slow his fall to a safe, controlled stop just 20 feet from the massive airbag on the ground. The moment came, and went. A collective gasp swept through the crew as Kevin's body didn't slow. It continued to plummet, a human missile aimed at the unyielding concrete of the studio lot. The magnetic brakes had failed. The only thing left was the secondary safety, a thick, quarter-inch steel emergency cable designed to catch him. For a horrifying half-second, it seemed to hold. And then, with a sound like a rifle shot that echoed across the lot, the cable snapped. The aftermath was a blur of screams and sirens. The perfect, controlled chaos of the movie set had devolved into a scene of genuine, horrific tragedy. This was the scene that greeted Detective Isabella, Izzy Rossi, and her partner, Marcus Thorne, 2 hours later. The glamour of Hollywood had been stripped away, leaving behind the grim reality of a crime scene. Thorne, a homicide detective for 20 years, looked at the twisted remains of the rigging and the chalk outline on the ground with a weary sigh. Tragic, he said, his voice a low grumble. Damn shame. But what are we doing here, Izzy? Looks like a workplace accident, not a homicide. The studio is calling it a catastrophic equipment failure, Izzy said, her eyes not on the body, but on the complex web of cables and machinery high above them. But the Stunt Performers Guild and the insurance company are screaming for a full investigation. A double failure, primary and secondary Cephidius, almost unheard of. They're calling it a 1 in a million statistical impossibility. Izzy didn't believe in 1 in a million chances. She believed in patterns, in cause and effect, in the subtle, often invisible hand of human intention. Their investigation began with interviews. They spoke with the distraught rigging crew, the shell-shocked director, and the film stars. Alex Vance was visibly shaken, repeating over and over how it could have been him. Lena Sterling was pale and tearful, her composure shattered. The most compelling witness was Jack's Ryder. They found him sitting alone on the edge of the set, his head in his hands. His usual aura of supreme confidence was gone, replaced by a raw, convincing portrait of guilt and grief. "I killed him," Jack said, his voice hoarse. He didn't look up at them. "It was my rig, my responsibility. I checked every inch of it myself. It should have held. It had to hold." He walked them through the safety protocols, his voice thick with a mixture of technical jargon and self-recrimination. He explained how the primary magnetic brake system worked and how the emergency cable was the foolproof backup. He was a man broken by his own perceived failure. Thorne saw a grieving professional, a man shouldering a terrible burden of responsibility. Izzy saw a masterful performance. There was something in his explanation that was too polished, a narrative that felt rehearsed. The initial findings from the forensics team seemed to back up the accident theory. The magnetic brakes had suffered a sudden, inexplicable electronic burnout. The emergency cable showed signs of stress and a clean snap, consistent with taking a sudden, massive load. The official report was leaning towards a tragic, unforeseeable combination of mechanical and electrical failure. But Izzy couldn't let it go. She took the snapped steel cable back to the lab, not to the police forensics unit, but to a friend, a professor of metallurgy at the local university. "Look at it like it's a murder weapon," she told him. Days turned into a week. The Ascendant production was shut down, a multi-million-dollar catastrophe. The media was filled with stories about the dangers of stunt work and the tragedy that had befallen the promising production. Jack's Ryder was portrayed as a tragic figure, a man whose life's work was to protect people, now facing the consequences of a freak accident. Then the professor called Izzy. "You were right to bring me this," he said, his voice buzzing with academic excitement. "This is no ordinary brake. We put it under an electron microscope. The cable didn't just snap from stress. It was compromised." He explained that he had found microscopic grooves and metallic dust deep within the steel weave of the cable. The pattern was consistent with the use of a high-frequency ultrasonic blade, a specialized industrial tool that can create invisible stress fractures deep inside metal. The cable had been deliberately weakened from the inside out, designed to look strong, but guaranteed to fail under the precise load it would be subjected to in a real fall. "This wasn't an accident," the professor concluded. "This was an assassination, engineered by someone with a sophisticated understanding of materials science and a great deal of patience." Suddenly, the 1 in a million chance wasn't a chance at all. It was a calculation. Izzy and Thorne now had a murder, but they had no suspect and no motive. Who would want to kill a young, up-and-coming stuntman? Kevin Dawson had no known enemies, no gambling debts, no secret life. He was just a kid living his dream. Izzy's mind kept coming back to one nagging question. What if Kevin wasn't the target? A stuntman is, by definition, a stand-in for someone else, someone more important. The stunt was rehearsed a dozen times over the last 2 weeks, she explained to Thorne, pacing in front of a whiteboard covered with photos of the cast and crew. They used sandbags for the first few tests, then Kevin for all the final rehearsals. But on the day of the shoot, who was supposed to be doing that fall, according to the original schedule? Thorne checked the production logs. His eyes widened. Jesus, Izzy. The schedule was changed at the last minute because of a lighting issue. The original plan was for Alex Vance, the star, to do a face shot drop. They were going to rig him up, drop him the first 30 feet to get his screaming face on camera, and then switch to the stuntman for the rest of the fall. So if the lighting hadn't been changed, Izzy said, her voice grim, if the schedule had held, who would have been on that cable when it snapped? The star of the movie, Thorne breathed. The target wasn't the stuntman. The target was Alex Vance. Kevin's death had been a tragic, unforeseen consequence of a failed assassination attempt. Someone had wanted the movie star dead and had engineered a perfect, deniable accident to make it happen. Their investigation now had a focus. They dug into Alex Vance's life, looking for motives. He was a rising star, but with his fame came enemies. Jealous rivals, a messy divorce from his last marriage, whispers of a gambling problem. The list of potential suspects was long. But none of them had the highly specialized knowledge to sabotage a stunt rig in such a sophisticated way. None of them except for the man who designed and oversaw it. The man who was portrayed as the tragedy's greatest victim, Jax Ryder. But the motive was missing. Jax and Alex Vance had a good working relationship. Jax was well paid, respected. Why would he want to kill the star he was paid to protect? While Thorne pursued the more conventional leads in Vance's life, Izzy began to build a psychological profile of Jax Ryder. She went deep into his past. She found what everyone else saw on the surface. A consummate professional, a man who had dedicated his life to his craft. But beneath that, she found a shadow narrative of frustration. Jax had come to Hollywood 20 years ago, not as a stuntman, but as an actor. He was talented, handsome, but he never got his break. He was always told he didn't have it, that elusive star quality. So he had pivoted, using his athleticism to break into the stunt world, where he had excelled. He had become the man who made other men look like heroes, a ghost in the machine of stardom. Then Izzy found the connection that made everything click into place. She was looking through old industry magazines and gossip columns from 5 years prior. She found a series of articles about a small, independent film that had been a festival darling. The film's breakout star was a young, unknown actress named Lena Sterling, and her co-star, in a small but critically acclaimed role, was Jax Ryder, in a rare return to acting. The article spoke of their incredible on-screen chemistry and whispered of a passionate off-screen romance. Izzy then pulled up the current production details for Ascendant. The star was Alex Vance. The leading lady, now a major international star, was Lena Sterling. And according to the tabloids, Lena and Alex were Hollywood's new golden couple. Their on-set romance the talk of the town. The motive was no longer missing. It was a tale as old as Hollywood itself. Jealousy. A man who had seen the woman he loved, and perhaps helped discover, leave him for the very type of star he could never be. He was the shadow, forced to watch from the sidelines as the golden boy, Alex Vance, lived the life he had once dreamed of, with the woman he had once loved. Kevin Dawson hadn't just died by accident. He had died because a lighting schedule had changed, placing him in the crosshairs of a meticulously planned act of jealous revenge. The revelation of the love triangle transformed the investigation. Jax Ryder was no longer just a person of interest. He was the primary and only suspect with the means, motive, and opportunity. But their case was purely circumstantial. They had a theory of motive, a sophisticated murder weapon, and a dead stuntman who was likely collateral damage. What they didn't have was a single piece of evidence that placed Jax Ryder's hand on that ultrasonic blade. His performance as the grieving, guilt-ridden professional was so flawless that no one on the Ascendant crew would even entertain the idea that he could be responsible. Thorne, a believer in confronting a suspect head-on, brought Jax in for a formal interview. In the sterile, gray interview room, Jax was the picture of weary cooperation. He listened patiently as Thorne laid out their theory. That the rig was sabotaged, that Alex Vance was the real target. Jax's reaction was not one of defensive anger, but of thoughtful concern. "You think someone tried to kill Alex?" he said, his brow furrowed. "My God, that's horrifying. But to think it was me? Detective, my entire career is built on one thing, trust. The trust that actors like Alex place in me. To suggest I would betray that, it's insane." When Thorne brought up Lena Sterling, Jax's expression barely flickered. A sad, resigned smile touched his lips. "Lena and I had something special. A long time ago," he admitted calmly. "I'm proud of the woman and the star she's become. She and Alex are happy." I'm happy for them. That's all there is to it. He was untouchable, his emotional armor as thick as any Kevlar vest he'd ever worn for a stunt. He was released without charge, a man seemingly wronged by a suspicious police force. The investigation stalled. The studio, facing a mountain of debt, made the controversial decision to resume production on Ascendant. Alex Vance, after a period of mourning and reflection, agreed to return. The script was rewritten to account for the tragedy, and a new, even more respected stunt coordinator was hired. Jax Ryder, though cleared of any official wrongdoing, was quietly let go, a casualty of the film's bad press. It seemed the case was destined to go cold, a perfect crime hidden behind a tragic accident. But Izzy was convinced that Jax wasn't finished. A man driven by such a deep-seated jealousy, whose first attempt was thwarted by a random act of fate, would not simply give up. He was a performer and his story wasn't over. His revenge plot needed a second act. Izzy persuaded a reluctant Thorne to put a discreet surveillance team on Jax. For weeks they watched him. He lived a quiet life. He went to the gym, met with his agent, and spent his evenings alone. There was nothing to suggest he was plotting another murder. But Izzy saw a pattern in his gym routines. He wasn't just staying in shape. He was training, pushing his body to its physical peak, like a man preparing for a demanding role. The production of Ascendant moved to a remote desert location for its climactic action sequence, the Canyon Run. It was a massive car chase, involving high-speed maneuvers through treacherous, winding roads, culminating in a controlled crash. Alex Vance, keen to prove his mettle after the tragedy, insisted on doing much of his own driving. For the most dangerous parts, a new stunt double was hired. One evening, Finn, the department's cybercrime analyst, called Izzy with a hit from the surveillance. "I've been monitoring Jax Ryder's online activity," Finn said. "He's been on a lot of stunt-related forums, which is normal. But last night, he spent 3 hours on a dark web hacking forum, looking up schematics for the stunt-by-wire system." The stunt-by-wire system was a cutting-edge piece of technology being used on the Ascendant set. It allowed a stunt coordinator in a secondary vehicle to have remote override control of the main stunt car, including the brakes, accelerator, and a fail-safe engine kill switch. It was designed as the ultimate safety feature. "He wasn't just looking up schematics," Finn continued. "He downloaded a piece of malware, a ghost protocol that can create a dead zone in the remote signal just for a few seconds, long enough to disable the override." He was looking at a map of the Canyon Run filming location. "There's a section of the road with a 200-foot drop and no guardrail." Izzy felt a chilling certainty. This was the second act. Jax was going to turn the ultimate safety feature into the perfect murder weapon. He would wait for Alex Vance to be behind the wheel, then create a dead zone in the remote signal at the most dangerous part of the road, making it impossible for the new stunt coordinator to trigger the brakes or kill the engine. The car would fly off the cliff, and it would look like another tragic accident driver error, or perhaps a sudden, inexplicable signal failure in the remote desert. The problem was, they still had no proof that he intended to use the malware. Owning it wasn't a crime. They needed to catch him in the act. Izzy and Thorne raced to the desert filming location, a desolate, sun-baked landscape of red rock and winding asphalt. They briefed the new stunt coordinator, a grizzled veteran named Cutter, who was initially skeptical but quickly grew alarmed as Izzy laid out the technical details of the potential hack. Their plan was risky. They would let the stunt proceed as planned. Alex Vance would be in the car. Cutter would be in the remote override vehicle. But Izzy and a team of armed officers would be hidden near the deadly turn, and Finn would be patched into the stunt-by-wire system, ready to initiate a hardwired backup kill switch the moment he detected the malware signature. The day of the shoot was tense. The desert heat was oppressive. Alex Vance, blissfully unaware of the unfolding drama, was amped up, ready for his big scene. He climbed into the driver's seat of the high-performance stunt car. Lena Sterling watched from the sidelines, her face a mask of anxiety. From a hidden vantage point, Izzy watched through binoculars. She scanned the rocky ridges overlooking the road. And then she saw him, a lone figure, dressed in hiking gear, half a mile away, holding a small, powerful-looking directional antenna. It was Jack's rider. He had come to watch his masterpiece unfold. Action! The director's voice crackled over the radio. The car chase began. The stunt car, with Alex at the wheel, sped down the canyon road, a convoy of camera cars following it. The scene was playing out perfectly. As the car approached the deadly turn, Cutter, in the override vehicle, prepared to take remote control to guide it safely through the corner. "I'm taking control," Cutter's voice said over the comms. "Engaging remote brake assist." He pressed the button. "I've got nothing," he said, his voice suddenly tight with panic. "The signal is dead. The system is not responding." "Now, Finn," Izzy commanded into her radio. In the command truck, Finn slammed his hand down on a large red button, activating the hardwired backup. The stunt car's engine instantly died, and its emergency brakes locked up. The car screeched to a halt, its front bumper hanging just inches over the edge of the 200-foot drop. On the ridge, Jack's rider lowered his antenna. His face contorted in a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. His perfect scene had been ruined. He turned to flee, only to find Thorne and two uniformed officers appearing from behind a rock formation, their weapons aimed directly at him. The second attempt had failed, but this time they had him. They had a direct line of sight on him, operating a device at the exact moment the safety system failed. They had the malware he had downloaded. They had a motive. The Invisible Man had finally been caught in the spotlight. Alex Vance was helped from the car, pale and trembling, slowly realizing he had just survived a second attempt on his life. Lena Sterling ran to him, her relief turning to horror as Izzy explained what had just happened. Her eyes scanned the distant ridge where Jax was being taken into custody, a look of profound, sorrowful understanding on her face. The romance that had started on a film set 5 years ago had just ended with a near-fatal act of vengeance on another. The shadow that had haunted her success had finally been dragged into the light. The arrest of Jack's rider sent shockwaves through the insulated world of Hollywood. The man who had been a symbol of safety and professionalism, the tragic figure from the Ascendant set, was now being accused of 2 meticulously planned attempts on the life of the film star. The story was a media-feeding frenzy, a dark Hollywood fable of love, jealousy, and betrayal. In custody, Jax was a changed man. The mask of the calm, grieving professional was gone, replaced by a cold, simmering rage. He refused to speak, offering nothing but contemptuous silence to the detective's questions. His high-priced lawyer argued that the evidence was circumstantial and speculative. Jax was a hobbyist, a tech enthusiast. Being on a public hiking trail near a film set was not a crime. The signal failure could have been caused by any number of atmospheric or technical issues. They were building a case on a foundation of coincidences. Izzy knew they needed more. They had enough to go to trial, but a skilled lawyer could easily create reasonable doubt. They needed to find the thread that would unravel Jax's entire story, a piece of irrefutable proof. They needed to find the murder weapon from the first crime, the ultrasonic blade. A search of Jax's home and workshop had yielded nothing. The place was impeccably clean, as organized and controlled as the man himself. He had been too smart to keep the weapon, but Izzy was convinced he wouldn't have just thrown it away. The blade was a symbol of his cleverness, of his superiority. He would have hidden it, savored it, perhaps even kept it close. The production of Ascendant, now a cursed and legendary film, was once again shut down. The desert set was abandoned, a ghost town of half-finished scenes. The studio, on the verge of bankruptcy, sealed the entire lot, making it a restricted area. Izzy kept coming back to the first crime scene. "He's a performer," she told Thorne. "He's theatrical. He plans every move. He wouldn't just dispose of a key prop. He would hide it in plain sight." She obtained a warrant to search the sealed-off studio lot, specifically the massive 300-foot skyscraper set piece from which Kevin Dawson had fallen. It was a long shot, but it was the only place left. She and Thorne walked through the eerie, silent set, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous soundstage. The place felt like a tomb, a monument to a tragedy. They searched for hours, finding nothing but discarded equipment and dust. As they were about to give up, Izzy's eyes were drawn to the complex latticework of steel beams that formed the skeleton of the tower. Jax was a master rigger, a man who knew every inch of this structure. He would know of a place no one else would think to look. She noticed a heavy-duty junction box, part of the tower's electrical system, about 50 feet up. It was in an awkward, hard-to-reach position. Using a maintenance ladder, she climbed up to it. The box was sealed with 6 heavy bolts. Thorn handed her a wrench, and she began the arduous task of opening it. The last bolt came loose, and she pulled the heavy metal cover away. Inside, nestled among the thick electrical cables, was a long, thin case. She opened it. There, lying on a bed of custom-cut foam, was the ultrasonic blade. It was a sleek, industrial tool, looking both futuristic and lethal. But it wasn't just the blade. Next to it was a small, encrypted hard drive. This was the final piece. Finn, the cyberanalyst, worked for 2 days to break the encryption. What they found on the drive was Jax's undoing. It was his private journal, his manifesto, his script. The drive contained meticulous, detailed plans for both murder attempts. It had engineering diagrams of the sabotaged rigging, copies of the malware code for the car, and, most damningly, a series of video diaries. In the videos, Jax, speaking to the camera in the privacy of his workshop, laid bare his soul. He spoke of his bitterness, of his consuming jealousy of pretty boys like Alex Vance who, in his eyes, had stolen the fame and the woman that were rightfully his. He saw himself as the superior man, the craftsman, the artist, while Alex was just a product, a face on a poster. "They live in a world of make-believe," he said in one entry, his eyes burning with a cold, righteous fire. "They don't understand the physics of the fall. They don't feel the heat of the fire. They just smile for the camera. I'm the one who makes the magic real. It's only fitting that I'm the one who makes the danger real, too. This isn't murder. It's a correction. A final, perfect, practical effect." He detailed his plans with chilling pride, boasting of his own cleverness, his ability to manipulate the systems of safety he had helped create. The hard drive was not just a plan. It was a performance, a final monologue for an audience he never intended to have. The trap was set. They had the weapon and the confession. The trial was short. Faced with the irrefutable evidence from his own hard drive, Jax Ryder's defense crumbled. His cold, controlled facade finally shattered in the courtroom when Lena Sterling took the stand. Her testimony was quiet and heartbreaking. She spoke of a man she had once loved, a mentor whose intensity and passion had eventually soured into a possessive, controlling bitterness that had frightened her away. As she spoke, Jax stared at her, his expression a toxic mixture of love and pure hatred. In that moment, the jury saw not a master stuntman or a criminal mastermind, but a small, pathetic man, consumed by a jealousy so profound that he was willing to kill for it. Months later, the Ascendant movie was finally released. Pieced together with reshoots and digital effects, it was a box office behemoth, its success fueled by the morbid curiosity of the public. The film was dedicated to the memory of Kevin Dawson, the young stuntman whose death had been the first tragic act in a real-life Hollywood drama. Izzy and Thorn watched the film's climactic scene, a digitally created version of the Canyon Run, in a crowded theater. The audience cheered as the CGI version of Alex Vance's character narrowly escaped a fiery crash. "It's funny," Thorn whispered to Izzy in the dark. "Millions of people will watch this. They'll see a hero. They'll see a spectacle. But they'll never know how real it almost was." "That's Hollywood," Izzy replied, her eyes on the screen. "It's the world's greatest magic trick, the art of making you believe in something that isn't there." But she knew better. She knew that sometimes the most terrifying illusions are the ones that hide a monstrous truth, and that the most dangerous falls are not the ones you see on screen, but the long, slow, internal ones, the descents into a darkness from which some people can never come back. The credits rolled, but for Izzy, the final cut on the case of Jax Ryder had already been made.